One. Hello, Jain.
Okay.
Good to see you.
Hi. Good morning. It's good morning over here, and thank you for including me in this fantastic lineup of leading, thought-provoking people. I'm really honored. Thank you.
Pleasure to have you here, Jain.
Yes. Yes, so I'm the last speaker. So I heard today that I've got the freedom where I'm going to give I've got 1 hour slot, but if I wanted to do some extra information, I can keep just carrying on towards the end.
Yeah, we can give you another 15 minutes.
That's good. Yep. So I've actually got 2 presentations today. On the roster, it said that I was going to talk about the sacred geometry of crystals, which included a reference to Tesla and the idealized 60 hertz. But to pave the way for that information, I'd like to start with the golden ratio. That's kind of been my passion for 35, 40 years. I've spent my whole life studying the Fibonacci sequence, and I found some amazing patterns within the Fibonacci sequence. And one of them is there's a 24 code and a 60 code, and both these numbers that are embedded in the Fibonacci sequence are the numbers for time. And the reason why I want to talk about the 24 code and the 60 code is that when Tesla prophesied that the ideal frequency for electricity in the world should be based on 60 hertz. So when I give you this presentation on the Fibonacci sequence, the golden ratio, it's also alluding to the importance of the harmonic number 60. So am I ready to start with my PowerPoint? I'm going to give half an hour on this, open up to questions, and then I might do 15 minutes with the Tesla towards the end. But like I said, I want to open up the way to understand the importance of the harmonic numbers 24 and 60 that are in nature. So I like to subtitle the golden ratio, the living mathematics of nature, because nature is our teacher. And I studied the work of Victor Schauberger, who basically said we need to comprehend nature first, and then we copy it, because this is what technology is really all about. So I've encoded on my logo, you'll notice that I've put the Fibonacci numbers in that circle. And the reason why it's divided, this purple section that you see here is called the golden angle. So when you divide the circle by the golden ratio 1.618, it divides this circle into the black horseshoe shape and this angle here. So that's 137 degrees, which was sacred to all the nuclear physicists, because when you take the reciprocal of 137, you end up with 0.007, which is the number for James Bond. So I'm going to start, before I give you the advanced information on the golden ratio, I'm going to talk basic, for those who don't know what the Fibonacci sequence is. It's divided into one section here, the numbers, and then I'm going to talk about how they apply in biological systems. So just a quick introduction about Leonardo da Pisa. He was born in Italy, where the Leaning Tower of Pisa is. So the Leaning Tower of Pisa is the birthplace of Leonardo, and he's become immortalized because his inclusion of the Fibonacci numbers that he got from Egypt when he wrote this book in the 12th century called Liber Abaci. This allowed the Hindu and Arabic numbers to go into the Middle East. So the reason we write 1, 2, 3, 4 the way we do was that it originated from the Hindu numbers, the ancient Sanskrit numbers. And Leonardo was hired by his father as an accountant or a merchant. They were selling stuff, trading stuff in North Africa, and he was the accountant. So he met all these Vedic mathematicians. So Leonardo in the 12th century met these Indian mathematicians that could calculate in their head at the speed of light. So here's the reason why we use numbers like 1, 2, 3. It entered into the Middle East in the 15th century. The reason we use a decimal point, the minus symbol, all these modern day symbols originated from Leonardo. And so everyone knows this infinite additive sequence. So 1 and 1 makes 2. We keep adding the previous number. 1 and 2 make 3, 2 and 3 make 5, and it goes to infinity. So what I've been doing is I've been looking for what we call repetition. There's something about repeating numbers. When things repeat, it gives us a handle on the infinity of this sequence. And I believe that this sequence of the golden ratio is the key to all advanced technological systems. So I've got this bar in the, okay, so there are 13 spirals. When you look at this pine cone here, nature's signature says, when you look at a pine cone, which I do have here, when you look at a pine cone, it's not just 13 spirals going one way, it's there's 8 spirals going the other way. So there's this fascination with what we call counter-rotating fields. So that's what a pine cone does. And I believe it's a secret. So I call it the pine code, playing on the word pine cone. And we have to ask questions like, why did the Vatican create a pine cone that was 5 stories high? It's a mystery. Like obviously we believe it relates to the third eye, the pineal gland. And that's why we want to link sacred geometry to nature, is that we believe that with all this fluoride and pesticide and we're disharmonically embedded in this earth, what's happening is that our third eye is shrinking. And there's a connection you'll see later on with the pentagram, that there's a connection between sacred geometry and health. And the symbol for the Pythagorean order was based on the 5-pointed star, which is the shape of every protein in the body. So there's another, we can take another pair of Fibonacci numbers. We looked at 813. This is 1321. So 1321 is this was a sculpture that was done in the gallery in Canberra, and it won a prize. So you can see that it's the mathematics of beauty. That's what the golden mean is all about, the golden measure, the sacred cut. It's the most aesthetic and pleasing geometry to the eye. And you can see that there's no friction. It's all about coherence and beauty. And when we look at the sunflower, we see another arrangement of 2134. And the reason from the Fibonacci numbers, when we keep dividing these successive pairs of Fibonacci numbers, like 8 into 13 is about 1.6. Then you say, well, what's 13 into 21? It's roughly another 1.61. But when you get to 21 into 34, it gets closer and closer to 1.618. But the golden ratio 1.618 is not really a number. It's a relationship of wavelengths and proportions that approach a plateau or a sweet spot called 1.618033988. So when we look at the mathematics of the human hand, we realize that why doesn't the elbow bend here at the halfway point? So if I extend my arm out and I say, well, there's halfway, but my elbow is over here. So that just, if my arm is 1 meter long, there's 0.5. A fraction more than half is called 0.618. So that's the reciprocal of the golden ratio. So the golden ratio is a trinity of a longer length to the shorter length, but they're in a harmonious relationship based on the pine cone. So all you need to know is 1.618 is phi, but this fraction, 0.618, fraction more than half, is the ideal proportion that nature uses in the macro and the micro. So the symbol is like a circle with a line through it. So in 3D, the symbol of the golden ratio, this circle line, is that if we had a sphere and we put a rod through the vortex through the eye of the spiral, that would be the symbol of the golden ratio, a sphere with a rod or light cone going through it. So we often appropriate the Nautilus shell as the symbol to the golden ratio. So we can plot all these Fibonacci pairs, and as we keep dividing, like 3 divided by 2 is 1.5. 5 divided by 3 is above the line, it's 1.666. Then the next pair would be, say, 13 divided by 8 is 1.61. And what you're going to realize as we keep dividing Fibonacci numbers, the decimal approximation is above, below. And as this goes to infinity, we get so close to 1.618033 that we realize that what we've created mathematically is an oscillation. So the mystery of phi is that it's about wavelengths in coherence. But we can turn these Fibonacci numbers into squares. So I have a bit of a concept that we're going to call Fibonacci numbers one dimension. So in 2 dimensions, we're going to look at turn every number into a square. So here's the 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, and you can go to infinity. And in a minute with this PowerPoint, you're going to see I'm going to turn it into 3 dimensions, 4th dimensions, and then we're going to ask, well, what's the 5th dimensional analog of the Fibonacci sequence? So we've so far, when we put, if we get our compass here and draw arcs, we'll see that we've translated the Fibonacci numbers into an art form, which is basically the spiral, the key to all life. And a lot of graphic artists will look for the eye of the spiral as a focal point. So this is the long wave. So when you look at this long wave, this goes to infinity. And so you can see here on this fossil of an ammonite that the long wave is going forever into the universe. But that, we'll call that evolution. It's growing and growing. But if you look closely, there's the other polarity is that it's getting shorter and shorter. It's going towards the microcosm, we'll call it the atom. So the golden ratio of the Nautilus shell phi spiral is the only shape in the universe that unites duality. It connects the macro and the micro. And you can see here in this Japanese art, the great wave of Kanagawa, is that we're so mesmerized by this divine proportion that it's still we're still talking about this amazing artwork. But what I'm interested in, if you're interested in, say, the work of Dan Winter, you want to talk about the physics of implosion. Where does, as this is the long wave, as it spirals and tumbles, the waves get shorter and shorter. We want to locate the eye of the spiral. And the way that the ancients did that was to take 2 diagonals. So that long diagonal there, which is a 32-degree angle, which is symbolic. I'll talk about it another time. And a shorter diagonal here, where they intersect, they happen to intersect actually at 90 degrees, which is kind of a way to enter and exit out of the dimensions. There's a lot of cosmic knowledge about the right angle, the 90-degree. I won't go into it now, but it's interesting. Take note that there's a 90-degree angle, which is kind of like a waveguide to go into the infinity of this multidimensional geometry. I like to call it the eye of God, but another name I have for this, I call it the sweet spot. So I've been fascinated, like, is this a portal? Is this a dimensional shift? And is nature teaching us about wormholes and portals? And it's all about embracing limit and limitlessness. It's the unification of duality. So I've been talking about this for so long. I'm just so excited because this is constituting a whole new curriculum. So if we're going to create a new sacred geometry curriculum for children so that they love mathematics, you know that when you say mathematics, you muscle test someone, the arm goes down. We are weakened by the word maths, and we know it's a sacred language. People are scared of it. We need to do more animations and a lot of eye candy and a lot of nature graphics so that children, when they see, oh, the Fibonacci spiral is the key to the universe, we want to keep playing with it. We want children to get excited. So I decided to put 4 golden spirals in the 1 golden rectangle. We saw 1, but now we've got 4 eyes of the spiral. So if you're a graphic artist, you could join these 4 centers and create a nice border. So if you're going to create a logo or a graphic, you might want to play with these. So in my early 20s, I was living for 2 years with Aboriginal people near Torres Straits, and I taught myself sacred geometry in the jungle. I just copied nature. I watched how leaves fell, how the water flowed. So in my early 20s, without any knowledge about Fibonacci, I was doing all these diagrams. So this PowerPoint is going to just have a lot of eye candy for you. Just for people who haven't seen this, I just want you to appreciate how beautiful it is, because that's the key word. Like in the word calligraphy, kalos means beauty, and the fascination with the Fibonacci sequence is the mathematics of living structures that are beautiful. And when we see a beautiful person and a beautiful face, that we believe it's in the golden ratio. But what if we put 2 golden spirals together? So now we've looked at the origin of 1 spiral, but when we put 2 together, this one's interesting. And we can see that it kind of suggests the symbol, the origin of love, heart. But what if we merge this spiral with the other spiral? And this is the work of Dan Winter, not this diagram, this is another diagram, but Dan Winter decided to superimpose the 2 eyes of God into the one love heart symbol. And from this, he developed the concept of what's called fractality. So I just wanted to pay tribute to Dan, because when Dan did this Zoom animation of the fractal heart, it changed the consciousness. I remember some people were weeping when they saw this, because it had a transformational effect. Because what we're going to look at now as we go on is that the first organ that forms in the embryo wasn't the brain, it was the human heart. So as you know, everything's about the love frequency. So when Dan did this fractal animation, the consciousness of the planet was changed forever, because now we're accessing ancient knowledge. And that's why, as I end this presentation, I'm going to talk about biology, technology, because if it wasn't for this computers and this high technology, we wouldn't have these amazing animations. Same when we look at Ulam's spiral, when we study prime numbers, we realize that the infinity of prime numbers forms a flower, but we could only show these amazing psychoactive diagrams when we study, when we give tribute to technology. So the end of this presentation is about connecting the biology with technology, which is the union of pentagram and hexagram, which is what DNA is made up with. So Dan Winter did another diagram too, where he said, instead of having squares for Fibonacci numbers, why don't we express every Fibonacci number as a cube? So now we're entering the third dimension, where if we started drawing, let me get a cube. So if we started taking a cube and said, I'm going to put my compass here and draw an arc in space from that corner to that corner, and we joined all the arcs, what do you think you would get? And the answer is a most beautiful shape called the ram's horn, which was the symbol for Pan. And as you know, the Greek god of nature and the countryside, Pan, got demonized. And it's kind of like a rearrangement of the word sacred. When we take the word sacred and rearrange the letters, you get scared. So, but our job is to remain as brave warriors to release this knowledge that the spiral of the big male sheep, the bighorn male sheep, or the ram's horn is divinity, yet we've cursed it. And the same with the 5-pointed star. We've taken all these sacred symbols. What's coming up in Australia is 11/11, the 11th of November. And I just discovered, doing some research to talk about the 11/11, that they just did a movie on 11 called The Gate, which is about demonizing 11/11, so that everyone gets scared of the number one. And what's number one about? Sovereignty, power, leadership, authority. So we've just turned the Fibonacci sequence from 1-dimension numbers, 2-dimension nautilus shell, 3-dimension is the ram's horn, and you'll see this 3D in a lot of beautiful seashells. So now we're coming to what I would call a 4th-dimensional sphere. So the circle is 2D. In 3D, it's a sphere, but what's a 4th-dimensional sphere? We would say it's like an apple that has an implosion point. You know, when you look at an apple, it's dimpled at the top and down the bottom here, or like the curvature of the Earth at the North and South Pole. So this is a 4th-dimensional torus, which we're going to go deeper into. I've always been fascinated by the torus, because I'll just play this animation so you can appreciate it. But it's our duty as educators to start taking this authentic mathematics and learn about what does it mean to turn ourselves inside out? What's fractal mean? Fractal means when the inside is the same as the outside. So what's implosion all about? And that's why these animations are the future in mathematics is, here's another animation by Richard Jarvis, an amazing graphic artist who's just given us this flower of life. And you can see that it's exploding out, but things just can't explode forever. That's why Big Bang is such a nonsense. There must be a feedback or a looping where something re-enters itself, because that creates what we call cyclic nature of infinity. So Nassim Haramein believes that this torus is the fundamental shape of everything, from the proton to the Earth to the human to the galaxy. And when they did the Voyager, when they examined the Voyager footage studying the sun, Nassim noticed that the sun wasn't just exploding. He noticed that there was an implosion point going on as well. So in a summary, I would say, forget this Cartesian 6 dimension. You know how we do the north, south, east, west, that's these 4 points. That's true in flatland, and there's a north and a south, the zenith, the nadir, and it makes an octahedron, which is interesting. But I would say beyond this concept, there's only two directions, an in and an out. That's it. It effectively sucks everything in and spits everything out. So in the human embryo, as I said before, referred to, the first organ to form is actually the heart, not the brain. And that's why when we meditate and still the brain, still the mind, still the heart, we're coming back to authenticity, to some sort of source. So I'm going to summarize now what we've just examined. So 1 dimension was knowing the mathematics of the nature of the Fibonacci sequence. 2 dimension is the flat golden spiral. 3D is the ram's horn, is the key. 4th dimension is the torus, the physics of implosion. So then we could fantasize, well, what's a 5th dimension? If some people don't even believe in dimensions, but if there was a 5th dimension, I would call it a unified field. And that's symbolized by when we take the torus. So here's a slinky. We know that when we take the torus and we join the alpha and the omega, the end to the beginning, we end up with kind of like a donut. We know that. But if I was to cut this in half, like cut it in half, you would end up with this like figure 8. So if you have a business card and you're a Reiki master, your symbol would often be the figure 8, because what you're actually saying is, oh, my symbol is a figure 8 because it's a memory of a multi-dimensional construct of the universe. And so so Dan Winter's gone further. It's not just the figure 8, but it's also nesting tori, the torus within the torus within the torus at the golden Fibonacci sequence will create non-destructive implosion. It means we can travel to infinity. So this is the future technology, must be based on the golden ratio. So I call that the transverse cut, or the infinity symbol. This is just a little anecdote. I was in Sydney and I was talking to my nephew, and I was doing my PowerPoint. He walked in the room and he saw this slide, and I said to him, what do you think this looks like? Obviously we're fascinated, but well, what's inside the torus? So this is a beautiful graphic of it inside of the torus. And his response was, oh, it's a church. And I was blown out by that. I thought, here's a 6-year-old boy saying that the inside of a torus looked like a church. So this creates poetry. We could call this the church of the torus. But we have to get back to reality. We look at the human body. We say, well, what's the shape of blood? The blood cell, when it's flattened, looks like a torus. It's not really a torus, but a flattened blood cell does have the semblance of a torus. So this is the blueprint of creation. A few more animations by Dan Winter. He takes the one, so we'll call it the ram's horn. So one ram's horn in space, because of his ability to animate, creates mystically the cup within the cup within the cup within the cup. And this is a very potent animation, and it makes us wonder, well, what is the sacred cup? Is it the blood that collected, is it the cup that collected the blood from Jesus's wound when he was wounded? Or is it about Sir Galahad on his quest for enlightenment? Is it the Sun Grail, the holy blood? Is it about DNA? Is our blood all about the DNA? So this is another topic to be discussed later on. And then oops, sorry. So this animation here shows it's the collaborated work of Dan Winter, who animated this, and Stan Tenen, who recognized the origin of ABC by actually looking at the shapes of the hand. When we take the most fundamental male shape in the universe is a pyramid. So it's actually a tetrahedron. So if we took the most potent symbol for masculinity is a pyramid, right? That's a tetrahedron. If we put inside of that the ram's horn, so I'm going to marry the male with, say, a female. The symbol for the feminine is the ram's horn spiral. If you could visualize the spiral inside of that, and we shine a laser light and let it reflect on the wall, you'd get the shadows of the cave. You'd start getting a language of light, A, B, C, D. So this work is quite fascinating, and it's opening up the origins of more sacred languages like the Enochian alphabet. So we're probably in a limited language at the moment. So that's the first part. That was part one of the golden ratio. And I'm sorry if I'm skipping through a lot because I want to get to the Tesla notion as well. But part two, this is more on the golden ratio, how it exists in living systems. So if everything we just did now, let's just call it female mathematics of the spiral, well, the masculine version is straight line. So anything curved is female. Now, when we we're looking at a 5-pointed star, but the 3-dimensional version of the 5-pointed star is the dodecahedron, which has a lot to do with base 12, zodiac, months of the year. So, but we believe that this is, every cell in our body is based on sacred geometry. Every protein in our body is a pentagram. And you can see why they demonize it, because they don't want you to go down this rabbit hole, because you might discover the I am, who you really are. But this is fractal, because can you see this 5-pointed star? Every time you draw the star within the star, it reduces at 0.618. So this whole star to that star is 0.618, 0.618, and it goes into the microcosm forever. And the way that the large connects with the small is through the torus. That's how it all feeds back. So these are decals that I make. You can get these from my website. But this is 1.618 with 108 decimals, because I'm going to show you now how the key to the golden ratio, the Fibonacci sequence, has a 108 code embedded in it. My early work was playing with the word earth, earth, earth. And when you reread earth, 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 it says heart, heart, heart. So I call this the earth-heart connection. And the Pythagorean school, 2,500 years ago, at the time of Buddha, they had this symbol above the doors. If you saw this in Europe somewhere, you knew that person was part of the brotherhood, sisterhood. But they had 5 letters for the 5 angles of the pentagram. HYGIA spells Hygeia. And that's the origin of our word hygiene. That's the connection between sacred geometry and the health. It's such a critical point. That's our duty, to live on pure water and eat whole foods, because it's upgrading our cellular structure, our memory. And you'll see the 5-pointed star everywhere in the petals of a tomato or tomato. When you slice a pawpaw, what we call it pawpaw, you may call it papaya, you'll see that nature intelligently chooses to arrange its seeds in a pentagram, because that's the ultimate form. And I love teaching this to children. So as you can see, my passion is working with children of all ages, because they're going to stand on our shoulders and redefine what true technology is all about. The apple seed is the ultimate symbol, goes back to the biblical references of the temptation with the apple. It was all about tapping into our DNA. Star fruit, I'm very fortunate to live in a tropical area. So I live, and I'm so happy when I eat the restructured water from, say, this star fruit. Flowers are our teachers. Yeah. So starfish, you can go on and on. You can see just the pentagram alone is a complete PowerPoint on its own, but we're interested in the dynamics of the toroidal form. And this, when I was Roger took me to New York, and thank you, Roger, because I got to meet Alex Gray and I taught with his students, and he's got this famous painting of a toroidal field around the toroidal field around the human form. So we can't not talk about the torus. So you can take the torus and find a point, not in the center, but at 0.618, you can create 2 circles. There's a larger circle and a smaller circle, and they're in the golden ratio, and that creates the arbelos. You can draw these geometries to learn more about them. This is the golden angle. So when a tree, if we have a vertical trunk, the branches just don't come out at any angle. They come out at 135, and the next, if you go above the trunk, it goes 135, 135. So trees are obeying the golden angle. The smaller section is 135, 137.5, which I believe it's the fine. When you talk to physicists, they worship this number as the fine structure constant. When we're talking about what's the smallest indivisible particle, the Planck constant, which is very close to the 1.618 ratio. So when you take the reciprocal of 137.5 divided into 1, it's 0.007, which is kind of interesting that being referred to the James Bond. I made a discovery of an approximation to this 137 degree is in the Vitruvian Man. So Vitruvius was 2000 years ago, who Leonardo da Vinci, this was Leonardo's mentor. So I love looking for all these sacred angles. It's in the human hand. You can research all this stuff. So we're all defined by the harmonics of the golden ratio. When I went to Tibet with my family and we met some monks, and they had this big red book, and I found this picture that Doxy put in his book, but I found that all the monks weren't allowed to draw the Buddha unless it was in the precise golden rectangle proportion. Otherwise it was bad energy. You had to be trained to learn about the divine proportion. We want it in our architecture. So this is the work of Michael Rice. If you just watch Michael Rice, he talks about bio-architecture, so that the reason why we feel awe when we're in a building and we see a beautiful building, the harmonics of the building that are built on the Fibonacci sequence are the same as the human body. So when we're in awe, we're actually recognizing our own divinity. I was talking before about the relationship between the pentagon and the hexagon. You can't just talk about phi and the pentagon. We also have to talk about the hexagonal structure, because that's the 6 around the 1, which I'll talk about in my crystal. When I give some extra talk, I'll talk about the importance of that. So you'll find the golden ratio in the triangle. When you circumscribe the triangle, or the equilateral triangle, the distance from AB to BG is the same as where the elbow bends. It's 1.618. So this is amazing that not just the triangle, but if you drew the unit square, if that's 111 in the circle, we end up with BG being 0.618. So everything about the harmonics of the triangle, the square, the 3, 4, and the 5. We know that the 5-pointed star has 200 golden ratios in it. This is a language, the journey from the 3 to the 4 to the 5, triangle, square, pentagon, is the journey of creation. And that's why we need to teach this to children. Then there's more advanced stuff where you could take 3 chopsticks. And so I'm going to have this vertical. Then the next chopstick, I'm going to place it at the midpoint. And the third chopstick, I'm just going to place it at the midpoint of that slope. And before you know it, you're in the golden ratio. So it's just a natural occurrence. And I'm very interested in all the mathematical theory of what I just showed you. We also know that the golden ratio is in the pyramids of Egypt. You can see that it's this, if this distance is 1 from the center to the apothegm, if that's 1, we know that the slope height is 1.618. I'm a builder by trade, a bricklayer. So when I build roofs on people's houses, some customers actually want me to build this pyramid on their roof. So all I need to know is actually the height. If I know that the height is called 1.272, that's part of Kepler's triangle. If that's 1, we know that's 1.618. Well, what's critical is called the golden root, 1.272. What that means is, how do we get 1.618? We know that if we what number multiplied by itself gives us 1.61? The answer is 1.272 times 1.272 equals 5. And not many people are talking about the golden root, but I'm completely obsessed about it. And someone did some graphic arts where Jesus is actually holding the symbolism of the golden ratio, phi, and the golden root. This is the advanced stuff that I like to talk about at a later date, and it's all in my e-courses. I've got lots of e-courses that define all this knowledge for you. I even wrote some books that if we understand the perimeter of the pyramid, the 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, if we divide 1, 2, 3, 4 by the height, if we divide 4 by the height, which is 1.272, we end up with the true value of pi called 3.144. And I've done a lot of work. I've written several books that we don't even need pi. All we need is the golden ratio. Pi is obsolete. We just need to know the harmonics of the golden ratio. And you have to start questioning, why have the greatest mathematicians in the world ignored or obliterated the golden ratio on your calculator. So when you pick up your hand calculator, you can see pi and e, all these constants, but why, you have to ask yourself, why is it missing? Because it's so sacred, they don't want people to know about it. But I've got a whole thesis about that. It's called the true value of pi, 3.144. The golden ratio is inside the icosahedron. So if when we start looking at, I do have an icosahedron here. So if you start looking at three-dimensional shapes, that's the shape of the AIDS molecule. Any virus is technically 20 triangles icosahedral, but I'm holding these 4 points. So these 4 points are the golden rectangle, which is the same as your MasterCard. If you get your MasterCard and put it over your hand, that same rectangle in your hand, this ergonomics, is the golden rectangle because it's nature's idealized choice for proportion. The US letter size is based on the golden root. If this is 1, this is 1.272. And that's why people are saying, why aren't the USA changing to A4? Because this is root 2 harmonics. We're not interested in that. We're interested in maintaining the original harmonics of the phi ratio. So we hope that the US letter size does not change. So I just want to give a little bit of theory before I close up on this. I just need to check how much time I've got. I've been about 40 minutes, so I'll just come to some conclusion. I just want to show you that there's a secret pattern inside the Fibonacci sequence. So if you take the Fibonacci numbers here and we add the digits, so what we could do is, if we just subtract number 9, this is called modulus mathematics, clock mathematics. You know, when you're at the airport and the time is 14 o'clock, you know that you take away 12 and you end up with 2 p.m. Well, that's called clock mathematics. That's high end. If you're studying real estate, you need to, and probability theory, clock mathematics called modulus 12 is important. This is modulus 9. Take away 9, which is really adding the digits. So 34, take away 9999, you end up with a remainder of 7. Now we end up with these single digits. And what's interesting about the digits is that all the opposing pairs, well, first of all, there's 24 of them. So keep that number there because later on we're going to get 60. So there's 24 infinitely repeating numbers when we take away number 9. But look at the opposite pairs. 1 and 8 is 9. 2 and 7 is 9. 4 and 5 is 9. It's all. And then if we said there's 12 pairs of 9. So if we said what's 12 times 9, you know the answer is Sri Holy 108. So I've done 10 books just on the concept of 108. In fact, I've done an encyclopedia on Sri 108. And the more you study this this 24 code of the digitally compressed Fibonacci sequence, you're going to realize that it's not a Star of David that joins all the 369s. It's actually what we call a unicursal hexagram. But I just want to show you that there's so much more. There's a universe of knowledge embedded in that. And I've also done murals. There's the 24 code on the outer ring. So I've put a lot of love and devotion into teaching this. And also, if we just took away the number 9 from the Fibonacci, now we're going to take away the number 10. So when you take away the number 10 from the Fibonacci numbers, it's really just looking at the final digits, because you're taking, if you've got a Fibonacci number 21, take away 10, it's a 1. You're just looking at the last digits. And the guy that did this in 1774 was a favorite mathematician of mine, was Jean-Louis Lagrange. And he found that there were 60 infinitely repeating digits in modulus 10. So we've looked at mod 9, this is mod 10, and inside of this 60 code is another whole universe of information. I've decided to to do another little mural of that. But there's 12, every 12 Fibonacci number is divisible by 5. And if you look at these digits, every 5th digit is a 0 or a 5, 0 or a 5. But if you look at the numbers in between, you got a 1, 1, 2, 3. Visualize 1, 1, 2, 3 as 1,123. This is one of my amazing discoveries. I'm so proud of this one. It all comes in my dream. So if you add 1,123 to its opposite quad number, 9,987. If you add those two numbers, you're going to get the sum of 1,110. But in harmonic maths, we're allowed to drop the 0. So 11,110 is really harmonic 1, 1, 1, 1. If we added up all these quad numbers in here, if we added up, say 8,314 to 2,796, that also adds up to 11,110. But the sum of all these quad numbers happens to be 66,660. I'll say that again. Inside this universe of Fibonacci numbers, when we compress them and do modulus maths, is amazing harmonic geometries. So it's no coincidence that all these pairs add up to 1, 1, 1, 1, and everything adds up to 6, 6, 6, 6. And I decided to do an animation of this. So if you just get graph paper and start anywhere on graph paper and keep turning around like we do with Ulam spiral, 1, 1, 2, 3, we keep turning. Keep turning around 90 degrees, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8. Follow these numbers, and this is what you get. I'll just click here. So you're going to see I'm taking these 60 numbers now, and I'm just doing it on graph paper to see what happens. Right. So that was, and what you just saw now, it's repeating, is that it re-entered itself. So where it started from here at this point, the 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, it started there, did a dance, 90-degree turns on graph paper, and the last 60th digit came back exactly to that point. So I find that really, this is like, I'm hoping that someone's going to do some advanced circuitry based on this, because it's coherent, there's no friction, it's beautiful, and we're copying nature. So this is a summary. We just looked at the first 60 Fibonacci numbers. We looked at the last digits, and we found that the pattern re-entered itself. And this is one of my decals where I've got the 60 numbers on the outside, and on the inside here, I've got the 24 code. Isn't that amazing that the Fibonacci reveals a 24 code and a 60 code? So these are time codes. This could be the secret to time travel, which is why obviously they don't put it on our calculator. So when we study deeper, there's not just one 24 code, there's actually 3. And the 3 phi codes reveal 111 and 888 symmetry. We're basically pattern hunters looking for symmetry. As we get more advanced, we keep multiplying 1.618 by itself, and it forms a caduceus. Like 1.618 squared is 2.618. Cubed, it's 4.2, but we can go the other way and keep multiplying by 0.618, and it goes infinitely smaller and infinitely larger. And I believe it's a stairway to heaven. So that's the end of the, I'm halfway through my talk. That's the first PowerPoint. And I just wanted to let you know, we've done the golden ratio. I wanted to lead on a little bit with Tesla, why Tesla's work was so important. But before I do that, I just want to show you, for those that want more knowledge on the golden ratio, who are fibonatics like myself, I just want to show you, there's I've filmed so much information during this COVID time. I've been forced to stop traveling overseas. So I have 17 lessons on this golden ratio e-course. There's 7 hours of content. They've been pre-recorded. You get lifetime access to all of this information. There's lots of chapters going on to the pentacle, the golden root, da Vinci, and much more. And normally it's valued at $550 US dollars, because there's so much content. And you also get this certificate of completion. We've got a beautiful team of people putting all this together, because we believe that these are the codes of creation. These are correctional codes. But for those that are tuned in now, because you're supporting this breakthrough conference, we'd like to make an offer at half price for $275 US dollars. That's a 50% off. Yeah, so I just wanted to conclude that I'm going to steal one of Dan Winter's words. I've attended a lot of Dan Winter conferences, and he said, I'm just going to summarize this 3-day conference in one word, and the key word is becoming more shareable. He called it shareability, because the wavelengths of 3, 5, 8 Fibonacci are in a beautiful dance, and we need to copy nature so that we can take this to the next level. So I hope you enjoyed this PowerPoint. I'd just like to do a little bit more. I know I've nearly gone an hour, but if I just do a little bit more on the Tesla, then I'll open it up to some questions. So I'm aware of the time. And then Roger can come in with asking some of the questions. So I just want to go through this quickly because we just want to get to the Tesla bit. This is the sacred geometry of crystals. So if you're going to study golden ratio, you need to study how crystals built satellites and social media, everything we're doing in our technological world. If you're listening to a radio, in fact, even if you're listening to this broadcast right now, it's because of crystals. And there's been I just want to look quickly about crystals in the human body, and then we get into the technology. Yeah, so I'll just show you a bit of eye candy with how beautiful crystals are, natural, double terminated phantom crystals, octahedral crystals, which I do have here. This is your diamond light body. And these are naturally occurring geometrical structures. So I believe that crystals respond both to the mind and to geometry. And that sometimes when you hold a cluster, I believe it's a living community of beings, and some of them have triangular records like this ruby. They're so fascinating. I have friends that have spent their whole life just talking about the sacred geometry of crystals and how much intelligence that they hold in their color, their frequency, their beauty, and the magnificence of the caves. And obviously it's going to bring up moral questions. Do we have the right to mine crystals and harvest them? But I know that they've come to us for a special reason, that we're here to raise the frequency of the planet. So just a little bit about crystals in the human mind. I've also got a whole e-course on this, which I'm not going to go into, but I'm just going to show you that there are crystals in our third eye, which is like a radio. It's connecting us to the higher realities, liquid crystals in the third eye. I also believe that there's crystals in our inner ear. There's some kind of like calcite crystals, calcium phosphates and apatites. These microcrystals, they're kind of like salts. They allow us to hear. Without crystals in the ear, we wouldn't even be communicating. So we are just a nest of amazing crystals. So here's the eardrum. There's a certain part here. I just want to show you there's a certain part as you go through the eardrum, there's there's the membrane, the eardrum, but there's also a certain section here called the utricle, and inside the utricle there's crystals inside this section here where they're like pencils. And the reason why people get dizzy sometimes is that these crystals in the ear, they sort of bend over, and you end up falling over and getting dizzy. So there's a whole science to the vestibular system that maintains balance. Some people call them ear rocks. They're just basic calcium carbonates. Scientists call them otaconias. But I'd like to do a lot more on this because it's more than just the ear. We have crystals in the eye, in the rods and the cones, which sends signals back to the brain. So we are the ultimate technological device. All we need to do is look within. We've got crystals in our bones, calcium carbonates. This leads on to what Roger would talk about with the doctrine of signatures and Paracelsus. But it's interesting that the largest bone in the body looks like a celery stick, the femur. So a lot of us, we love to drink fresh juices. So inside the bone, we believe that the structure of the strongest bones in the body are based on a cube that's been divided into 6 pyramids. So if I had a center point and joined all the faces to the 6 flat faces, I end up with a structure of bone. But if I took each pyramid and glued it onto the outside of this cube and joined those 6 pyramids, you end up with an Archimedean solid called the rhombi-dodecahedron. So this has also got 12 diamonds. But what created this, what's inside of that, is the cube atomic structure of bone crystal. So that's another way of explaining it. So we teach the 5 platonic solids, but later on I'll have e-courses just on the 13 Archimedeans. So this shape that I showed you, rhombic dodeca, which has got to do with the bones, I brought some of my crystals here. You can see that this is a raw garnet crystal. It's not been polished yet, but when we polish it, you'll start seeing the 12 diamonds. So this is natural crystal, but they did polish it just so you can see the 12 diamonds. But that's all based on root 2. So if we wanted to create an earth grid, we don't work with root 2, which is the harmonics of the cube and square. We work, there's more diamonds here. This distance from 1, if the short axis here is 1, this axis is 1.618. So these are called golden diamonds. So 30 golden diamonds is the Buckminster's Fuller unified grid. So this is all in our bones. So by studying ourselves, we're studying all this hyperdimensional geometry of blood cells we saw before. And a fish maintains balance by having these aragonite. So I brought a little crystal here of aragonite. It's almost like a 3-dimensional cross. So what's inside the cube, X, Y, Z, 3 axes at 90 degrees, is a naturally occurring crystal of aragonite. And without that, the fish couldn't swim. And I found some references. Aragonite is part of the family of staurolite crystals. So if you look at this cross, it's just basically a cross, a natural cross occurring crystal called staurolites. You'll see them in nature. So what's interesting is that in Egypt, they use the symbol of the aragonite, the 3-dimensional cross, as the original cross. It's the sacred geometry of all life. And by holding crystals, we're learning how to change the resonance of our own field. This is called what we call astral health. It's part of us healing not just the physical body, but connecting with higher frequencies. By drinking pure water, you can put these yantras, these diagrams on water, like the Emoto idea. But just by saying thank you, we've changed the atomic structure of water and crystals. So this is the hexagon, because nature, what's beautiful about this diagram of the soccer ball here is that the 5-pointed star golden ratio is all pent. But when we study the hexagon, that's got to do with what we call the 6 around the 1. It's about perfect packing. But we need both the 5 and the 6 here to form this is the carbon-bore 60 molecule that Buckminster Fuller predicted before they even discovered it. But this is also the structure of shungite. So when I travel around the world, I always put shungite in my water because it's changing the structure to this kind of soccer ball configuration here. But this is all about reconnecting with our DNA, really. And we've been kicking around this shape all our life, and we're still not utilizing it to its maximum. So that's a shungite. Some people believe it's like a meteorite, and it's very popular at the moment. Leonardo da Vinci loved, in his memoirs, we saw lots of beautiful drawings of the carbon-60 molecule. It's part of our astral health. And we know that when we're in love, our field expands, and that when we in fear, our field contracts. So I won't talk much about DNA. You know enough about DNA that we need to meditate. We need to take our time to connect with ourselves in this busy world. And just to finish this chapter here, we've got, we have here the Egyptians were grounding all these crystals for their beauty, for the beautification of their eyes and lips with lapis and emeralds, all these beautiful colors. Okay, now we want to conclude with the last chapter on crystals and technology. So I've studied the work of Vogel crystals. So I should have brought it, I don't have it here, but it's there's 2 angles. There's the equilateral triangle point, 60, 60, 60. And the other point is the angle of the pyramid. So there's a lot of learning. You've got to learn which way do I point? Do I give energy out, or how do I pull energy out of disease? So it's all based on mathematics and the geometry of angles. So if you can get Vogel crystals, they're very rare now because these were all hand carved by Vogel himself. So that's my main healing tool. We can call it harmonic resonance, the 52-degree angle. And what this chapter is leading up to is about the number 6, 60, and that's where Tesla comes in on the 66, 60, 600, 6,000. So we know that the pyramid angle is critical in this research. It's got a lot to do with the water tetrahedral molecule angles. But in the original Hebrew word for water, in Hebrew, the word for water was mem. So when we're talking about memory, by drinking pure waters, eating good food, we're restructuring our remembrance to source. Mem means water, and the ori is the light. So whatever memory means to you, it's something like liquid light, because we're coming up to a liquid screen in a minute with Marcel Vogel. So what he did was he took an image in his mind of, say, the Mother Mary. He took the Mother Mary, he held an image of it, and he had a lot of training with IBM, and he started doing this thought experiment. So he had this crystal plate with a crystal, liquid crystal called the oleate of cholesterol. And he was able to transfer the image of his mind of this Mother Mary onto the screen. And that led to this ability for us to communicate. It's about crystals and the advancement of technology. But what I'm worried about is this is going to be my conclusion, and this is the message of Atlantis really, is that if the technology is owned by people who have control, power, or misaligned thoughts, they're only going to amplify their own destruction, because the only priests who could wear the breastplate had to be people who had pure intent. You all know this. But what's happening is that we're suddenly being absorbed into a highly technological world. So I used to be very anti-computers and technology, but I've become a lover of technology because I realized through the Penta-Hexa, the study of DNA, that it's all part of our internal matrix, and that the first satellite in space was actually called the Castle. That actually had that name. So if I said to you, do you know what a crystal castle is? It'd be like a metaphor, but it's actually the satellites that allow this technology to be happening now. And I was born in October 1957. And the reason why I'm showing this is that I'm proud to say that when I was born, the first satellite, even though it was only a few meters small, was the Sputnik. The Sputnik was sent out in space on October the 4th, 1957. And then later on, they put another one out with a dog. But this was a monumental achievement. And then now it's become so sophisticated that this has led to the emergence of crystal technology. And that Sputnik went around the planet 1,400 times, traveling at great speeds, I think 29,000 kilometers per hour. And they've become so advanced now. But like you can see, they started using satellites for spy technology. I think I've got a photo. This is the first photo of Americans taking the photo of a plane in communist China of a jet bomber. And so this is the worry, is that we're not against technology, we're against the negative use of technology, how they're using this photo reconnaissance, which is, high resolution digital cameras. That means there's no more privacy left in our world. So we have to really start making some big decisions about where this technology is taking us. And it is like, we have to give thanks to technology that it took the first photo of the Earth. I think it was called Earthrise, but so we're not against the technology that we can go into space and see the magic of the Earth and the beauty of Saturn's rings. But did you know that Saturn also has 60-year cycles with Jupiter? Saturn takes 2 lots of 30 years, which is 60. At the same time, Jupiter's doing 5 lots of 12, 60. So there's all these 60-year cycles. And Venus and Earth are doing a dance in the golden ratio. As Earth does one cycle, Venus has moved 0.618. So there's this beautiful harmonic dance with all the planets. So I believe that as we start understanding the 60 code, which is the ancient Sumerian, our original mathematics went back to 60 seconds in a minute and 60 minutes in an hour. We call it sexagesimal, and it's vestigial because it's still with us on our time. And remember, we're talking about the Fibonacci sequence, golden ratio. Well, that's a 60 cycle. So this is all linking up to our technology with satellites, Einstein physics, that we're using this knowledge correctly. So the beauty of Tesla is that we have this is a quote from him, in a crystal, we have clear evidence of the existence of a formative life principle. And though we cannot understand the life of a crystal, it is nonetheless the life of a living being. So most of you who are listening to this will know that Tesla invented the first electric car, electricity, robotics, even when you're using your remote on a TV, all these many things, and drones. He's been misunderstood and his technology suppressed but he loved being alone, and that was his mantra, saying he requires solitude. But there was something about it was him that told us that the crystal vibrates at 32,768 times per second. So that thing's 32,768 is a hertz. We call it cycles per second, a hertz. It's 2 to the power of 15, 2 times 2 times 2. But that gave the desired pulse for 1 second. And you're going to see how this 1 second pulse is critical in the 60 pulse that he's going to be talking about. So So Tesla wasn't just saying that crystals are living beings, he's saying that the most biologically conducive frequency for the human species evolving into a rapidly expanding and high-tech world is the 60 cycles per second for electric currents. And some countries are using that, but not all countries. So there's huge discussion, is it 50 cycles like they are in Europe? But I just wanted to define that 60 cycles per second, I'm going to give you more information on what 1 second is. It's got to do basically with the nautical mile, which is 6,000, not feet, not miles, but 6,000 nautical miles. It's got to do with the 1 arc of grid second. So all these original measurements that we lost were relating to 60, 600, and 6,000. But going back to the cycles per second, 32,768, I've always loved magic square. So if we take all the numbers of the binary code, 2, 4, 8, 16, double that is 32, 64, double that 128, 2565, 12. When we double that, when we multiply any 3 digits in the row, in the column, or the rows, or the diagonals, the multiplication of every 3 digits is 32,768. So this is a harmonic code, and I've spent my whole life studying magic square, so I like to integrate it into this future curriculum for star kids. So this is Tesla's antenna. In 1931, Tesla was able to drive a car wirelessly without any fuel or wires. What he used was an antenna. And according to the research of my esteemed friend in North Queensland called Robert Martin, who brought out Bruce Cathy from New Zealand, who gave us the Earth grid, in 1931, Tesla was able to drive this car wirelessly and fuellessly by having an antenna that was 6.9444 feet. I'm coming to this number, but this is an understanding. What we're talking about is that the speed of light, he knew that the speed of light was 144,000 nautical miles, not miles, but nautical miles per second, per grid second. So this is when we divide 1 into 144, if you get your calculator, 1 divided by 144 equals 0.00694 repeater. So Bruce Cathy in New Zealand, who gave us the ley lines, he said, well, let's round off 69444. Let's round off the repeating 4 to a 5. So then he said it's 0.0695. And in harmonic maths, we're permitted to drop the zeros. So let's get rid of those zeros, they're gone. But we're also allowed to slide the decimal, because if I slide to the left, I get smaller. If I slide to the right, I magnify. If I slide the decimal to the 6.9, we end up with the length of Tesla's antenna. 6.944 feet was the code to free energy systems that they suppressed. And I won't go through all of this, but you can take the numbers for the DNA, the pentagon, hexagon. So pentagon is 5, is 25. 5 squared is 25. The hexagon is 6 squared, is 36. If you divide 25 into 36, 6 squared divided by 5 squared, the answer is 1.44. So in harmonic maths, slide the decimal, that's 144 harmonic, which all relates to the, so the speed of light has got to do with 144, but because we took the reciprocal or the inverse of the light, we're not talking about speed of light, we're talking about the gravity constant. So Bruce Cathy, in a nutshell, said that the gravity constant is harmonic 695 based on the reciprocal of light. And from this inverse of 144, Tesla was able to get I'm repeating it here. So Tesla was able to determine by tuning into the true frequencies of the field of the Earth, and the galaxy, he was able to get 6.944 antenna. So I just wanted to throw that in this lecture on the golden ratio, that by studying the golden ratio, magic squares, platonic solids, we're actually tuning in to the real mysteries of life. And you'll see that when you pick up the normal flower of life pattern, you will count this is called a three frequency. You'll say, yeah, there's three petals on each side. But if I counted all the petals, there's 90. And then I decided to count all the negative space. See these triangles here? There's 54 of these curved triangles. And I've never seen this in print, but no one ever decided to say how many components are there in the humble flower of life pattern, which is in the mass consciousness. It's the #1 yantra in the world. Everyone's talking about flower of life as the mother of all creation, but there's actually 144 components, because 90 petals plus the 54 triangles is 144. No one had ever talked about that. And that the 12th Fibonacci number, F12, if you go to the 12th Fibonacci number, happens to be 144. And it happens to be the 12th number. 12 squared is 144. This will never occur again in the Fibonacci sequence. So this is called number theory. So I'm putting all this into a beautiful dictionary called Harmonic Stairway, where later on, if you want to know about any number like 60, 72, I'll have a 4,000-page dictionary on this. So Tesla believed that the Earth was a giant crystal, that it created its own piezoelectric field, and that it emanated into the surrounding field. And that's why he was able to light up in the Colorado desert. He was able to light up a whole desert because he understood that the Earth is a giant crystal. It had a field, that the Earth could be used as a conductor and made to resonate to a certain electrical frequency. So that was the information on Tesla 60. I could finish here. If Roger wants me to finish, you can just, I've got a little bit more to say, but I just want to go a little bit more on 660, 600. So there's do you want me to keep going, or are we out of time to get questions?
You can keep going.
I'll conclude. I'll just do 5 more minutes to come to my conclusion, and then you can interrupt me to do questions. Okay, it's just a little bit of eye candy. We need to come to a conclusion about Atlantis. Like, is this a repeat? As you can see here, you're looking at the atomic structure of the black goo. No, I won't go there. We're looking at the atomic structure of carbon-7 molecule. That's the 6 around the 1. And so that's 1 atom thick, 1 atom thin. That's why the technology is getting so thin, you'll be able to put a little computer on a bracelet around your wrist. So where's all this going though? If it's getting so refined and amazing that we're remembering the time of Atlantis, where did the technology get abused? Did it get controlled? Why did it fall? Are we repeating our cycles? That this is what Edgar Cayce was talking about. But this is the carbon-7 molecule, and this is like the 6 days of creation. The 6 around the 1 in the middle is the 7th day when the Lord rested. So that's called the seed of life. This is the future for all technology, is the 6 around the 1, which is what creates the flower of life. But did you know, in my research, if you can see the figure 8, see this circle here, tangent to that circle, it forms a figure 8 infinity. Did you know that if I just drew 1 line through the figure 8, I end up in the golden ratio? So no one knows that. This is this was the work of the Theosophist Leadbeater. They showed you that the figure 8, the 2 circles, and therefore everything you see with seed of life and flower of life is all in the golden ratio. So this humble flower of life pattern that we see in nature here is the key to our technology, because it's not just hex, it's also golden ratio. So I've done some beautiful designs showing that when we go from the 6 around the 1 and add another 6, we end up with Metatron's cube. So the 1 plus the 6 and another 6 is the 13. And those centers of the 13 create all the 5 platonic solids. And 13 got demonized because this is the key to multidimensional access called Metatron's cube, the cube within the cube. They did a movie about it called Thor, that the cube within the cube, the tesseract, was the key to infinite energies. Okay, so when we go back to number 6, because 6 relates to 60, 600, 6,000 nautical miles, for 1 arc of second on the Earth grid. If you arrange 6 columns like this, from one, if you just go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, natural counting numbers in 6 columns, all the prime numbers in the universe are aligned in the fifth, the first and the fifth. So straight away, number 6 has a semblance of some kind of order. It doesn't solve the prime number cross 100%, but it shows us that there is an order in the universe. We're continually, in our world, what we're looking for is we're looking for what repeats, symmetry, because symmetry gives us a handle of the infinity. We can't understand infinity. So by looking at a crystal, we see highly symmetric order. That's the definition of a crystal. It makes it different from a rock or soil, is that a crystal is highly organized molecular structure at the atomic level. Here's crystal. The reason this computer is working is because it's all based on the atomic structure of quartz. But when you see the Star of David, make sure when you squint your eyes and you look at the Star of David, that you're actually looking at the 3-dimensional form called the star tetrahedron. So visualize many, many star tetrahedron, and this is what's inside the cube. So you see the cube, but you're actually seeing the star tetrahedron there. So, and that also has, the star tetrahedron also has 24 edges. This shape, going back to the Fibonacci sequence, has 24 edges and 24 faces and 24 internal triangular vectors. This is all linking to the Fibonacci code. So even though it's a cube, it's a star 3D form. And then we saw the 60 code. We're going from 6 to 60, the 60 hertz that Tesla postulated. So when we take away 10 from the Fibonacci numbers, we get a 60 code. We saw this one. So this was showing you that when you take the 60, when you take these 60 numbers that you see on the screen here, if you plot each one on graph paper, we start from here and it's going to end up right back to, watch this point here. So this is about coherence and repetition. This is an infinitely repeating 60 cycles. So it kind of makes sense that 60 hertz is appropriate. Let's go to 600, because harmonics 660 or 600 are related. When we take the dodecahedron, which is the ether spirit molecule, the key to fractality, if I was to keep stellating it, we would end up with what's called 120 cell, or so it's called the 600 cell. So this is the hyperdimensional, or call it 4th dimensional icosahedron, right? And so you're looking at something that's expressed in 600ness. And I just wanted to show you this animation that as we go into the next dimensions or the next levels, nature is still talking about 660, 600. And that's the shadow. When we look at the shadow of this polytope, we see an exquisite geometry. It contains 720 pentagons, 120 dodecagons, 600 vertices. It links up also with the Buckminster-Fullerene 60 molecule. Yeah, so, and just to go to 6,000 to conclude that this is all related, 6,000 feet was the original nautical mile, which is 1/60th of a degree. We're hitting back to 60 again, and that's called 1 minute of arc. So if we're going to really study, you'll never learn this at school, but this is called 3-dimensional trigonometry. We learn basic sine and cosine, but if you want to understand the stars and the cosmos, we need to study 3-dimensional geometry, trigonometry. I'm going to skip this chapter on the cubes because Walter Russell looked inside the cube and went deep into that nature, but this leads to the cube octahedron, which I'm very passionate about. It's made up of 4 hexagons. It's another 666 code. It's all made up of, if I'm holding a hexagon here, there's one hexagon, another hexagon, but it's actually a fractal because the inside, every vector that I'm holding, the radius that I'm holding there is 1 unit, is the same as the outside. This is the only shape in the universe, the cube octa, that it has the same radii internally as the external edges. So it must be kind of, it's a crystal. And we want to base our geometry and our designs on this. So this is a big debate. Should we be leaving crystals in the ground? Well, if you want to leave crystals in the ground and not use it, then you can't use social media because all the algorithms are based on crystal memory and all the apps. So we're at a point now where we want to in a summary, what I would say is that we're studying artificial intelligence now, but I would say we need to clean up the planet first. My 40 years of research on sacred geometry is to say that there's no point trying to reach for the moon and Mars when we haven't even cleaned up our backyard. I give it a word called ecosophy, eco, and Sophie means wisdom, but this icosophy is more about the EQ, what I call the emotional intelligence. I'm more interested, if a scientist invented something amazing, I'm not interested in the toy that he made. I'm interested in the consciousness of the inventor. Did he lead a good life? Is he on a good diet? So I believe that each crystal is not only a living being, but a library of vast information that we can access and apply. So explore the hidden symmetries in crystals, discover how they are highly ordered systems whose atoms, ions, and molecules reveal vast repeating patterns. And I'll just skip this. I'm just coming to the Atlantis. The last point is about Atlantis. You can see this is the future. It's just showing children beautiful eye candy just so that they get it, because on a subliminal level, this is all being programmed to you. You're remembering this language of light, of the earth grid. So when I was looking at the earth grid, it's got pentagons and hexagons in its shadows. It's both. So the earth grid that Buckminster Fuller was talking about is all phi ratioed. So we need to copy and comprehend this knowledge from the masters so that we can translate it into a simple structure. So maybe we need to bring crystals into the curriculum, play with all your crystals, talk to them, study magic squares and create grids, and let them potentize our thoughts, because the crystals are here to teach us the structures of temples. And the word temple got to do with the abode, which is the body. So we might as well just conclude now on Pythagoras had a student called Plato 200 years later. So Plato was around 300 BC, and he wrote a lot about what Atlantis looked like. It looked like rings with moats. It's all in a book that I studied called the Timaeus. There's amazing dialogues of, we really don't know what Atlantis was all about, but we're heading towards that high-tech civilization, which we really need to understand where we're going with all this technology. And I'll just end up with this quote here. When we connect with a crystal, we pay respect to its time with us and all that it emits, because the word emit is time spelled backward, appreciating that it has left its home deep inside the earth to karmically be with us, to teach us the correct use of technology. This is the lesson of Atlantis, to help us to wake up, to emit love. I'll end there, and thank you, Roger, for allowing me to have some extended time. And if we need to go into any questions, I'm open.
Yeah, for sure. No, that was fantastic, Jane. Wonderful.
Just the beginning.
So we are open for questions. So you can simply just unmute yourself if you like. And
yeah, I'd like to ask a question.
Yeah, go for it.
Hello?
Yeah, go for it. We can hear you.
Oh, this is Alan Road. Hi, thanks for that incredible lecture. I was hoping that you could go back to that slide immediately after Tesla's car. If you can go back there fairly easy.
Yeah, I can do that. Keep talking while I'm scrolling through.
Yeah, there's just a bit of information there that
definitely want to get one of those antennas for my car. Alan.
Yeah. Well, Robert Martin. Yeah, Robert Martin is out in Australia. He's the one that brought Bruce Cathy out. Is that on now? I've got the
no, that's I believe it's the slide immediately after that one.
Oh, this one.
Yes. Could you leave it there while we talk, because I want to read it.
Yeah.
I did. But
and let me read this, and then someone else can now ask a question, and I'll get back to you.
Okay.
My question is, how do I order your package for $275?
Is Jane, I did put your email in the chat window. So Barbara, if you look down the bottom there, you'll see Jane's email. I think that's probably the best way to get in contact with you, Jane, or what?
Yeah, the best one is it's Jane. If you remember, Jain108academy.com. I'll just repeat that, Jain, Jain 108academy.com. And then you'll see something that says e-courses. and you'll see about, that's it. Yeah, that's the place for all the, we're building up a huge volume of e-courses because that's the future. People want high visual content. It's not about mathematics. I mean, I love this mathematics, but it's presenting it in visual content.
Hi, Jane, you there?
Yes, I'm here.
It's Bobby from Australia.
Oh, hi,
really
Bobby. Yep.
G'day, mate. I'm really glad to hear your presentation. Just wanted to ask you, with the 275 package, does that include all of your Tesla knowledge?
No. It's going to, what we could do, I'm just with my team here, we can include the MP4 of this lecture in it so they get this download. We could embed the MP4 of this.
If they do,
you
the
do.
golden ratio contains it, doesn't it?
The golden, you know how I did 2 lectures, the golden ratio is a free MP4 in the course with all the ebooks. You also, I know you don't get all the ebooks, you get some of them.
But you get the Tesla information.
Yeah, you'll get the Tesla information on another one called the Crystal e-course. What was the Crystal Connections?
Yeah.
So this second bit on crystals was extracted from another e-course called Crystal Connections, and that was where I was talking a lot about Tesla. I'm not an authority on Tesla. Some people dispute the 60 hertz, but I don't want to be in a position where I'm just putting the information that 60 is a sacred anointed number and it fits in with
nature.
Yeah, and it's connected to nature and crystals. And so I'm just a theory. This is my theory that 60 feels appropriate to me.
Yeah, Jane, you mentioned Bruce Cathy as well. I've bought Harmonic 33 and Harmonic 695, just finished reading them both.
Yep.
I suspect Dan Winter's pretty right with the 50 hertz being the right frequency for the Hertzian system. But I feel, based on what you've just said and what I've just seen, I will be experimenting with voltage per second based on your 60 proposition.
Okay, that'd be wonderful, because this is just creating a forum, because I'm not challenging that 50 hertz is the correct. Yeah, I'd be interested in that, because I believe this is.
I think you're both right, but you're working on two different modalities or two different measurements, if you like.
Yes, one could be like the golden nature is never 1.618. So every time you see a golden spiral in nature, it's almost perfect, because 60 hertz would represent the idealized, and the 50 would be the on this earth plane. That's the frequency that it's accommodated, because you'll never reach the golden ratio. It's not even a number. It's just a plateau. It's a relationship between pairs of Fibonacci numbers.
Yeah, but everybody knows that we all feel that everything happens in life in the perfect time and space sequence. And that's why I think you're both right. I'd like to explore that. So 275, that includes all that Tesla content, right?
It's only in the golden ratio e-course, you're going to get the first half of this lecture that I gave on golden ratio. And then what I did was, if you want the Tesla thing,
if you give us,
if
you give us your email, if you give Jane your email, I can send you some posts on it, some writing that Jane's done on it as well.
And I can send you the PDF of this. Anyone that's interested in specific knowledge, I'll just send you the PDF of it as well. I've got it. I can, with one click, I summarize this whole PowerPoint into a PDF file, then I reduce the size and it becomes an ebook. So I can personally send anyone that writes to Jain108academy.com. I'll personally send you the ebook version of this as a gift for your interest. And
that's amazing.
And you'll get it. Yeah.
I've just emailed you I've just sent you my email address. Thank you so
much.
Okay.
Yeah, that's great.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Jane. I've seen enough of this page if you want to put your information up on the screen.
Oh, yeah, that's a really good point. I never did that. I think it's the very first slide. Hold on. I think the very first slide.
That would be very helpful.
Yeah, I just wanted to see you. It mentioned 12 vacuum tubes on that page in Tesla's device for the car.
This email that you see on the screen now, can everyone see my screen? It's got Jain108.com. That's Jane personally, but because we ventured into e-courses, you just got to add Academy. So it is Jane.
Golden ratio thing, you're confusing.
We don't have the
golden ratio cell.
Okay, we've got another. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, I do have it somewhere. One second. Which slide is it, Rena? I'm just talking to someone that when we
Yeah, go back, you've passed it. Should be one of those.
it's written somewhere. Isn't it funny? It's not written anywhere. No, it's not written anywhere. Sorry. Very disorganized. We're supposed to have the name of our website up and it's not anywhere. But I'm Jain 108.
Academy.
And since I joined we're a family team. I'm with the mother of my children and my daughter. We've become a family school, but we added academy. So Jain 108 Academy is where we film all these e-courses. So it's jain108academy.com.
Yeah, we just dropped it in the chat window.
Oh,
folks.
thank you.
Thanks to Steve. It's in there.
Great.
So there's a couple of questions.
Yes.
Yeah, Alan, do you have a question?
No, well, I just saw Dan Winters just posted the idea that well, Dan, actually, why don't you come in, Dan, and mention what you're going to say about that.
Yeah, well, I have to thank Dan for the use of all his animations. So if Dan's there, I need to also get
just a quickie here. I think it's actually Elizabeth Donovan knew that the key to the Tesla car was a version of the Floyd Suite famous vacuum triode amplifier, and the antenna resonance is key because it allows the charge implosion to tune that to the vacuum impedance, actually. But the vacuum triode amp, if you study Floyd Suite, you'll have it, I think, Alan, and talk to Elizabeth Donovan.
Oh, yeah, indeed. That's in the contradistinction to the notion of a vacuum tube, because that Floyd Suite vacuum triode was not actually a vacuum tube. The tubes that are mentioned in that Tesla car were conventional vacuum tubes, but the geometry of vacuum tubes, certain kinds of them, are known to link more with the ether, which of course was Tesla's source for the power.
Well, and indirectly, that's longitudinal embedding, which also what he was studying. Power without wires. Yes. And just to finish the thought here, Jane, your work on the 60 hertz is creative, but actually biologically, it's clear 60 hertz was a mistake. It's the voltage required to stop the heart is lowest. It's one of Tesla's biggest mistakes. 50 hertz is exactly golden ratio, X1 and Planck, and key to most every frequency therapy. For cancer, 50 hertz is key to therify. And by the way, 50 hertz enables carbon nanos in all conjugators to grow, and 60 hertz explicitly prevents, you cannot grow nanocarbon in 60 hertz plants, period. So 60 hertz is not actually conjugator, and therefore opposite to biologic. But I mean, that's not to say the other metaphor about the 60s is unuseful, but actually in terms of a frequency, 60 hertz is clearly anti-biologic, or it would not be the voltage at which, the frequency at which the voltage required to stop the heart is lowest.
Okay, I thought some countries were using 60 hertz. Some countries were still using
America.
The USA uses 60 hertz, and that's why they will never be part of the carbon nano revolution.
Yeah.
Can I ask one more question to Dan? Just one question to Dan. With the Bruce Cathy work, when you take the reciprocal of 144, if we call 144 light, the connection to the Tesla car is that because it's a reciprocal of 144, which is 0.00694, that antenna being a harmonic is more related to the gravity reciprocal of light. It's more related to the gravity. Is that the longitudinal wave that you were talking about?
That was useful. Cathy showed that you divide the speed of light into the Earth grid, and the harmonics of that is how you embed the Earth grid, the Schumann resonance, and you have to implode the Earth grid's resonance in order to feed any vacuum coherence device. So that is a useful thought for sure. Yes.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah.
Yes. So I must conclude that I'm not a scientist. I think I'm more of a mystical math person, and somehow I'm trying to use my knowledge of repeating patterns into the world of, it's more really, I want to teach children pattern and symmetry, but I thank you, Dan, for that, because I realize I maybe don't have the permission to enter this field of nuclear physics and start prophesizing about 60 hertz. So I learned something there.
Everyone here enjoyed the beauty of your presentation. It's wonderful. Kids, wonderful. But it is true that when you try to get to advanced stuff, you have to know the difference between numerology and physics, which is basically when it predicts wave mechanics.
Okay.
Fucking retard.
Yeah. Okay.
So, well, it's getting late. So if there's one or two more quick questions, just verbally.
I have a quick.
Yeah, go for it.
I think I can. I think it's quick. Maybe not. But I mean, so thank you, Jane. That was really incredible. And thankfully, you aren't a scientist. That's what I say. But anyway, that's a different subject. So would you say that? So I have difficulty with math. I am not a numbers person.
Yes.
However, I resonate with all of this on some other level. And that's why, you know, I mean, I own a Therify and I have some, you know, I resonate with all of this, but I have such difficulty with understanding so much of this math. Would you say that your, you know, the Fibonacci course, if somebody like me who struggles with math, with numbers, with calculating numbers, will I still be able to, you know, absorb it, I guess, if you will?
I would, we get this asked a lot because we're meeting so many parents and grandparents saying, I want to teach my child sacred geometry or my grandchild. So we've created, first of all, our main course that for beginners is called Sacred Geometry Beginner's Guide. And this chapter that you just saw now on the golden ratio is one chapter of other chapters like magic squares, platonic solids. So I've gone back to the basic building blocks of what are the most important geometries for any 5 to 10-year-old. But that one, we did like 10 hours of filming, but we realized that I gave too much knowledge, and that what we really wanted to do, we're going to do it again, another one for 5 to 10-year-olds, because we want to do another one where you don't need to know any multiplication table or any number. So let's say we want to draw a labyrinth or a magic square or a spiral. We're not really working with mathematics per se. We're working with sacred shapes and patterns. So we're really, we would have completed it by now, but the COVID restrictions on our borders meant we couldn't meet our filmmakers this season. So by early next year, we're going to be filming our most important course, which is Sacred Geometry called Star Kids, for 5 to 10-year-olds. And we're so excited about it because my job, I believe, I'm not a scientist, so my job is to translate the esoteric scientific down into the language of a 10-year-old who understands pictures and patterns. That's it.
You don't have to be good at maths to understand Jane's courses. He does sort of approach it from a you know, beginner's guide.
Yeah.
Okay.
So to answer your question, and also as far as mathematics goes, we're also doing a Vedic mathematics course coming up too, which helps people with numbers, whole brain learning, where you learn 2-digit numbers by 2-digit numbers mentally.
Yeah, so if you write to us, we can send you some links to which is the best course, Sacred Geometry Beginner's Guide.
Okay. Excellent.
Fantastic, Jane. Thanks for a wonderful presentation. So yeah, I just do a quick little recording. So if you just want to give a nice little applause to all of our presenters, thank you very much. Thank you much, Dan. And there's Valerie. Say hello to Valerie.
Hey, Valerie.
Hey, Valerie.
Thanks, Glenn, Jonathan.
Everybody.
So many people to thank here. It's been a lot of fun. So I appreciate all the support that you've given the team here, and it's been wonderful to see some faces from the past. Pamela, I'm looking at you, Pamela Burns up there in Canada, and all sorts of people that I've known over the last sort of decade or two. So thanks again, guys. Thanks
everybody.
Thank you, Roger. Good job.
Blessings.
All right.
See you.
Hey, Glenn.
Blessings.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, Dan. Thanks, Dan.
And
Thank you.
See you. Bye-bye.
You too.
See
Valerie.
you in the near future.
Adios.
Amazing feat.
Yeah.
Let's see what they're saying.
Roger, are you in Aquarius?
He's in Australia.